Hi everyone, I'm Jake Bates, I'm Workforce Management Consultant here at ShopWorks. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Workforce Management podcast. I'm joined by Ian, one of our co-founders. Hi Ian.
Hi Jake.
So today we're going to be talking about building a business case. I think naturally when we're looking to implement workforce management, that means there comes a cost. Accessing money normally means building a business case. So let's kind of kick things off. Why do we need a business case for workforce management?
I suppose it's to avoid making a mistake. Really, is why companies put them in place. It's a really good sort of governance discipline for big projects, and a workforce management implementation is a fairly big change management project within any organisation. So the business case is designed there to document, to justify why we're making the decision to put this software in, and justify not just the cost, but there's you normally got internal resource and I was going to say hassle, but you've got to get everybody involved from top to bottom, and you've got to make it worth their while.
And then let's kind of talk me through the process of building what looks like a successful business case.
So probably worth starting with, what does one look like? So it's probably a Word document, it's a written narrative that describes the decisions you've made and why you've made them, and probably a spreadsheet which documents some numbers and return on investment and calculations. Okay, so that's probably what you end up presenting, and maybe a PowerPoint. But you're presenting this normally to senior management to say, okay, fine, we've done our research. This is the decision we would like to recommend. Okay, and this is why. That's really what you're presenting.
And in terms of business cases that requiring workforce management, because we typically find gaps in the process to solve issues, what kind of issues would you kind of see to be solved?
So, but I mean, it's a good point, because I think maybe a way to look at that is within a business case, that's almost like what you're highlighting there is probably the first section of a business case. It's like, why put workforce management in?
What we're trying to solve.
Actually. So, and then we'll come back to, I'll answer that in a second, but if we can't go on to the next stage, it's like, what are we going to solve? What is our proposed solution for selling it?
Yeah.
For solving it, sorry. And, and then the next stage is, have you calculated whether it's worth solving, if you see what I mean? So it all comes around about it's a solution to a problem, and the business case is justifying that. So let's go back to that one. So if we look at about what problem we're trying to solve, you'd normally document the existing process, and it might be you've got an old system that's on premise that, isn't in the cloud, or you might have spreadsheets, or you might have paper. They're typically what we see. People are looking to upgrade from that sort of system. And then you're looking to document what problems is that causing. So it could be compliance problems. It could be, you've not got accurate demand forecasting. It could be that you're going over budget on your staff. It could be you're not paying people correctly. They're the sort of problems you're trying to solve. And what you would normally do in a business case is trying to justify the cost of those. Okay, so how much are you over by overtime spend? What is the risk of a compliance breach because you're not picking up working time directive breaches?
And I would assume that with these kind of business cases, it's not a case of, okay, I'm a HR director, HR manager, it's just going to affect me. It must impact different parts of the business as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point, is you want to, if you're trying to justify, and the expenses very rarely in just the software, the expenses in the time and the opportunity you miss, that your company is missing by doing that project rather than another project. And so you need to document how it impacts everybody in the organisation. So that could be the person in payroll, it could be the finance director, but it could also be the staff in the stores who are not getting their leave allocated on time, or retention. There are so many things that a workforce management platform impacts, and it's normally across the whole organisation if it's the sort of organisation that needs workforce management.
And just kind of a bit more detail in terms of what we need for kind of the proposed solution when building the business case.
Okay, so the obvious one is, this is the software, this is the vendor. You imagine documenting. We've looked at 3 vendors, and this is what they do, and this is how they solve the problem. So you'd almost look to say, okay, fine. If you took, say, compliance, this is the issue we've got with compliance. this is how this software solves it. It measures working time directive breaches, and we can report against each one. Okay, so that I'd expect to see that documented in a business case, that sort of level of detail.
Yeah.
And that tends to be on the software side, and then it tends to be on the people side as well, because this system you're going to put in is going to impact people in the stores or the departments where the workforce management works, and you should really document what problems they're having, like their leave isn't correctly booked. Yeah. Because you're using some paper form and it gets lost. Okay, and now we're going to give them an app so they can do it self-service. So they're the sort of things that I'd expect to see documented on the solution. And then, of course, there's other things like cost, security, like how's it going to look after how's it keep my data secure, lots of other sort of factors like that.
Okay, so I've understand my issue, what I'm trying to solve, how I think the solution can solve that, the impact on the business, the wider context and narrative. Naturally, workforce management comes with a price tag. If we look at kind of numbers, we talked about over time, there'll be a saving to that payroll spending time. Just talk to me about kind of numbers that I need to go into this.
We've got, as well as this podcast, we've done a blog article on this where we've documented this in quite a lot of detail. In fact, there's probably about 5 blog articles on it, including things like return on investment, time to value.
Yeah.
We've even documented an example. You can go and download our example business case format, and you can download our spreadsheet that helps you calculate it. But if we were to summarize the sort of two key numbers that you want to get to, one's return on investment. Okay.
Yeah.
And return on investment is a sort of percentage of the amount of value you're getting back compared with the investment you're putting in. Okay. And it's measured as a percentage. And so a 300% return on investment is showing you're getting 3 times the value back for the amount you spent. And we've got a calculator where you can put all the benefits in and the costs, and it'll calculate your return on investment. What you need to make sure you do is capture all the benefits and all the costs.
Yes.
Okay, so those costs might be the software vendor, might be, you've got to put a project manager on it, you've got to, do a pilot in 5 stores, and it's going to tie up some managers' time to do it.
Yeah.
And the benefits might be, like you say, the overtime saving, might be a reduction in risk. One of the things that we can measure, which is probably too detailed for this podcast, is a return on investment for reducing risk. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you're reducing the risk of a working time directive compliance breach, there is a value to that to the business, and we can show you how to measure it. The other big number to measure is called time to value. Okay, and time to value is, this is going to cost me £100,000. Okay, it's going to take me, let's say, 6 months to get to the benefits. So let's say the benefits of 15, whatever that is, 16 grand a month. I get to the benefit. I get to the time to value is when I start to get a profit on that return on investment.
Okay.
So I start the project. 6 months later, I'm getting £16,000 benefit a month. Okay.
Yeah.
The reason that's important, because as the finance director, they've got a budget to run, and they've put in this benefit for this year. When do they actually start to see it? So if it takes 2 years to see the time to value come in, then people are less likely to sign it off, because it's it takes too long to actually see any real return.
And when we talk about workforce management, depending on naturally the size and the configuration of the system, it attracts quite a large sum of money. So almost the jumping straight in at the deep end may be a bit off-putting. I've seen different models in terms of pilots, free trials. Is there a business case for that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, in our calculator, we'll help you calculate the return on investment of just doing a pilot. And the reason there's a return on investment of doing a pilot is because, let's say you spend 20 grand on a pilot.
Yeah.
Okay. And but the main project was £200,000.
Yeah.
If you do the pilot and you get to measure your benefits, okay, so you bear in mind you've done this whole business case based on return on investment and time to value. The pilot helps you test all of the assumptions you've put into your business case. So if you do the pilot and you go, yeah, actually I have saved on average 3% per store for this and 4% for that, and I have increased revenue in the pilot stores by 2%.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you can build the pilot for 20k in this example has allowed you to make a decision to spend 200,000 safely. If the pilot's a failure, okay, you've spent 20k, but you've saved £200,000 and a whole load of pain. Okay,
Yeah.
So again, in our business case, we definitely explain how to do the calculations around a pilot and make sure that you've got the ROI for the pilot, and just that one step will reduce massively the risk to the organisation.
Yeah, and I can imagine if I'm going to Mr. Finance Director to secure some money, having the opportunity to not dive straight in, maybe an easy business case to start with before building part of a wider one.
Yeah, and one thing I would add is that just the process of doing a business case, we see it. I know you've done them as well, Jake. We've done hundreds of workforce management implementations.
Yeah,
the companies and organisations that do a proper business case that probably document it, the whole thing is more successful. It's more successful to us as a supplier. It's more successful to them because they've done all the thinking in advance. They've mitigated risks. They've done the calculations. They know what they're measuring, and they know what they're trying to achieve. Okay, and then it's really clear whether you've achieved it or not.
Naturally, you can get some KPIs from it. And
yeah,
I think that measurability piece is probably quite key of that as well.
Yeah, and the KPIs are used. Some of the other podcasts, that we've done, including like getting engagement and getting the rollout. KPIs are so important to do that.
Yeah.
They get set in the business case, and again, what a good practice is 6 months after you've done it, actually the finance director should be getting the person who did it and say, right, come on, you told me you were going to get 4%. Let's get the numbers out.
Numbers.
Or you're out, Jake. You've had it. You're toast.
So, just for our listeners, you mentioned there's a calculator, Excel. Just for our listeners know.
Yes, fine. So if we'll put a link to the blog that relates to this podcast in the notes, and from there they can download like a Word document, which is like a template for a business case, and they can download a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, which is basically a template for doing all the calculations that we've discussed on here, and a whole load more that are in the business case document.
Great. Well, thank you for joining me today, and hopefully we'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Cheers, Ian.